This is our fourth time together. I'm saying good afternoon because that's what it is here in Nairobi, but wherever you are watching, I trust that this will be a very blessed time for all of us. So welcome to the Mountain Within Leadership Summit at the Nairobi Central Seventh-day Adventist Church Camp Meeting. We have had several sessions together. This is our fourth and last session in the leadership calendar, if you will, for this camp meeting. So please just allow me to quickly summarize what we have covered in terms of high points in the three previous sessions, and then we'll delve right into this last session. This session is entitled Assess, Prepare, and Divide Your Journey into Steps. This sounds very boring, but I tell you, it is essential. And every leader who is watching me at the moment will appreciate how important these aspects are. I'm Dr. Herta Von Stiegel. I'm the author of The Mountain Within, and a number of references in this presentation will be taken from this book, The Mountain Within, that chronicles an expedition that I led of disabled and non-disabled climbers up the beautiful, beautiful Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. We said at the very beginning, as a foundational presentation, that we need to understand leadership in the cosmic context. The governing principle of the universe is love. God is love. But this earth remains a territory in dispute. Our minds are the battlefields because there is a protagonist, Lucifer, the angel who fell. And while God's modus operandi, while God's way of working is delegation and free choice, Satan's way of working is motivated by utter selfishness, and it is fear, it is distortion, manipulation, and force. So against that context, where we are finding ourselves in a controversy, Jesus told us, all authority is given to me in heaven and on earth, all authority. And God is looking for leaders. God is looking for leaders who want to use their influence for His glory. Leadership is influence. Anytime you seek to influence the thinking, behavior, or development of people toward accomplishing a goal in their personal or professional capacity, you are taking on the role as a leader. Everything rises and falls on leadership, and we see it so clearly in this COVID-19 pandemic. Countries that are led well by sensible leaders, science-based leadership, they are faring a lot better than those that are not. The same is true for corporations, for churches, and so on. We talked about the importance of leadership. We talked about the trait or traits of a leader. And one of the key areas that we focused on was leaders are resilient. They are reinventing themselves. They change their leadership style. They adapt. But whatever they do, they don't give up. They persevere. Ellen White on perseverance said, "We can do nothing without courage and perseverance. We can do nothing without courage and perseverance." Christian life is more than many take it to be. She says there is need for courage, force, energy, and perseverance. Resilience is critical for any leader. You need to keep going. You need to persevere. And this is what the Apostle Paul tells us in Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. This is so important for leaders, particularly as we go through very difficult, uncharted waters. We become tired. Just before this presentation, I had a call with one of my teams, and I caution them to pace themselves because this crisis is a recipe for burnout. It is so easy to give up, particularly when everybody is looking to you to say, give me some certainty, give me some hope, give me a way forward. But don't become weary in doing good. Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. So that was in Revelation. So keep going, keep persevering. There is a rainbow. The end is in sight. So leadership in the cosmic context, the governing principle of the universe is love. Leadership is influence. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And true leaders show resilience. They persevere. True leaders also ruthlessly prepare. They ruthlessly prepare. When we planned this expedition to summit Mount Kilimanjaro with a group of disabled climbers, some of them who had never been outside their country, some of them had not been on an airplane before, we planned for 2 years, and we planned for every detail that we could possibly think of, including, God forbid, if someone died on the mountain, that there was somebody lined up to collect the body bags. Everything we could possibly think of, we prepared for. And in the book, The Mountain Within, I use this quote, "It is not enough to prepare for the obvious. Preparation means assessing the entire situation that presents itself, and most important, the human beings that are around you." At the end of the day, you can have the best technology, you can have everything under the sun, you can have prepared for everything, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to people. Assess the people around you. Do you have the right crew? Do you have the right team? It means planning for contingencies and looking at the details in the most objective way possible while never losing the big picture. This is the essence of really good leaders. Good leaders can cast the vision, they can see the big picture, they can see what's out there, but they don't lose the detail. And those are very different skills, very different skills. And I encourage you to actually think about, are you just a big picture thinker and you are losing the detail? If that's your situation, it still means you can be a good leader, but make sure you surround yourself with people who sweat the detail. The detail is so important. You need to make sure you don't lose attention to the detail. It's so funny, on the way over here to the church, we thought we had planned on everything and planned ahead and so forth. And we get into the Uber car, and all of a sudden the driver, who is already quite late, says, "Do you mind if we make a stop because I don't have any fuel?" And my husband and I just look at each other and said, "Boy, it's a good thing we planned for some extra time, because clearly we had not planned on the driver having to stop for fuel." And so yes, we had a good laugh and said it's better than pushing the car. So yeah, just stop. But planning, looking at the big picture without losing the detail. Robert Schuller, famous for the Crystal Cathedral, and now really a sad story of a leader who imploded. But he said so many good things, and one of the things he said was, spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. And another author said, the best preparation for tomorrow is to do today's job superbly well. I am very mindful in this context of having a virtual camp meeting. The first time this has been done here, I recognize how much time, how much planning has really gone into this, how much unglamorous, unspectacular preparation has gone into this week, where you, our viewers, can take advantage of this incredibly rich content. But it's all the unspectacular preparation. It's doing the work well that really enables a successful outcome. So ruthlessly prepare. The Apostle Paul was a model in this. In 1 Corinthians, he actually writes to the very troubled Corinthian church. He said, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way that you get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man beating the air. No, I beat my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified from the prize." What Paul is basically saying is, I can speak, I can do sermons, I can do all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, it is not so much what I say, it's what I do. Am I actually preparing? Am I doing the right things? Am I fighting in a way that is disciplined and thoughtful so that I could get the prize? So ruthlessly prepare. And Jesus is talking about this time and time again in the scriptures. And I'm just going to take one verse in Luke 14:28 to 30, where he says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build but wasn't able to finish.'" One of the saddest things for me is when I go around and I see, and this is all over the world, I see unfinished buildings. My husband and I were in Dubai right after the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. And it was horrible. There were all these buildings that had been started and they were unfinished. And it makes you so sad when you realize that somebody started but couldn't finish. We see it around here everywhere as well. Count the cost. Finish what you start. And fortunately for Dubai, they were able to finish those buildings, and now it all looks beautiful. But if you are going to build something, count the cost. Plan ahead. So ruthlessly prepare, think things through, and make preparation for all the details that you can possibly think of. And at this point, you probably would say, "Well, Herta, that is all good and well, but when I look at the whole picture, when I look at how daunting this is, I don't know where I'm going to start. This is just too much." And yes, I remember looking at Mount Kilimanjaro, all of 5,895 meters. It's a tall mountain. It's the world's tallest freestanding mountain. And what became so clear was that this mountain is not going to be conquered in one big leap, but it is going to be done one step at a time. So divide your journey into steps. President Theodore Roosevelt said, "I dream of men," and I would add women, "who take the next step instead of worrying about the next 1,000 steps." The hardest thing in life is getting started. Don't worry about the next 1,000 steps. Look first about the first step. A Chinese proverb puts it this way: "It is better to take many small steps in the right direction than to make a great leap forward only to stumble backward." So as you divide your journey into steps, take one step at a time. Psychologists call this chunking. If you're actually looking at the whole thing, the whole task, let's say you are writing a PhD thesis, which may take you 2 or 3 years, and you look at this thing and you say, this is so overwhelming, I can never do it. If you think about writing a book, for example, how am I ever going to do it? And the point is chunking. It is one page at a time. It is one chapter at a time. It is breaking things down into small steps. Mark Twain, the American humorist to some extent, and we need some humor these days, don't we? He said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming task into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one. Getting started is always the most difficult thing. But when you chunk it, when you break it down, you can do one at a time. In The Mountain Within, I say the best chance of success in reaching a goal that you have set is to survey it in its entirety. Then sit down and painstakingly divide it into small, achievable steps. Hire and train employees who are able to master this technique as well. It is so important. None of us is achieving anything by him or herself. We need people around us. Train the people around you to think the same way. Because if you train the people around you, the team around you, rather than being overwhelmed, they will be optimistic and enthusiastic as they tick each smaller achievement off the list. I remember as we were climbing and I could, climbing the mountain, as long as I could see the top, I was doing so well. But then the toughest part by a long shot was actually that final ascent, climbing in the dark. We left at midnight sharp. And at first it's euphoric. You take one step at a time, it is absolutely euphoric. But by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't see the stars anymore. They didn't provide the sparkle. I could just hear the shuffling of feet. I was very cold. And I remember thinking, goodness, why did I do this to myself? But then I quickly said, Herta, that's not helpful. You don't go there. And I kept repeating this verse over and over. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. And I remember thinking, boy, a helicopter would be great right now. But then I said right away, Herta, it's not coming. So, okay, they shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. And I'm thinking, running, you've got to be kidding. I cannot run right now. They shall walk and not faint. They shall walk and not faint. And I remember keeping going and saying, yes, that much I can do. I can walk. I can put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And that's all that was required at that point. And those of you who are watching right now or are here in this auditorium and are tired, think about the things that you can do at the moment. There is something you can do. Just like in my situation on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, I knew I could still put one foot in front of the other. Do whatever you can. Break things down into chunks so you can actually keep going. You can do something. Keep the momentum. Leadership is tiring. Whether it's in the home, whether it's in church, whether it's running a business, whether it's leading a country. Leadership is tiring, but break it down into what you can do, delegate what you can, and make sure that you don't lose the momentum. Keep going. And whatever you do, keep planning ahead. This cartoon is funny because this couple, as you can see from the cartoon, they are getting married. She looks like a bit younger than her husband, and so she's asking the priest, "Are you also doing funerals?" That's kind of planning ahead when you are at your wedding. And people judge you and judge your organization by how well you plan, what you do. And this is illustrated in the next cartoon. For quality education, plan ahead, but he has no room left. So this would not inspire you with confidence if you saw a sign like that. I want to close this session with a case study from the book of Nehemiah. If you have not read the book of Nehemiah, I so strongly encourage you to read it. Any leader should read the book of Nehemiah. It is a textbook. It is a textbook in leadership. And we don't have time to really go into details here at this time. But I just want to point out a few things. Nehemiah, as you know, has this privileged job. He is the cupbearer of King Artaxerxes. These are plum positions, yes, dangerous positions, but plum positions. But he sees the problems that are happening in his home country, the country that he wasn't even born in, but is closely affiliated with. And he says, I have to do something. I have to do something about it. So he decides to leave the court of King Artaxerxes and move back to Jerusalem and become the governor of Judea. Nehemiah is famous for building the wall around the city, and they built it in 51 days. It is a marvel of accomplishment. Ellen White, in the book Christ Triumphant, page 184, says, the example of this holy man, referring to Nehemiah, should be a lesson to all the people of God, that they are not only to pray in faith, but to work with wise diligence and fidelity. Let me make this very clear, and leaders, you know this. God is not going to do for you what he has gifted you to do for yourself. God operates through delegation and free choice. And he is giving us an awful lot. And he's opening doors. And he's always there. He will never leave us nor forsake us. But he's expecting us to use our reason, to use the gifts that he has given us. And so he will do his part. God is always faithful. So there is a role for prayer, but there is a role for diligence and fidelity. How many difficulties we encounter and how we hinder the working of providence on our behalf because prudence, forethought, and painstaking are regarded as having little to do with religion. But that's not true, because careful consideration and well-matured plans are as essential to success of sacred enterprises today as they were in the time of Nehemiah. I don't want you to miss this. Careful consideration, well-matured plans are as essential to the success of sacred enterprises today as in the time of Nehemiah. So Nehemiah is governor of Judah. He has been doing this for over 20 years. And there's just one part of Nehemiah 5 that I want to point out because it is so critical to what we do. Nehemiah, they have built the wall, they have done a lot of things, and then comes Nehemiah chapter 5, and that chapter is entitled, Nehemiah Helps the Poor. Nehemiah helps the poor, because things have gone very, very wrong in Judah. What we are seeing is poor people are being abused. They used to work as slaves for the Gentiles, and Nehemiah and his team used their own money to buy these people back. So they are now part of the fold of the people of Judah, but their own people now are starting to abuse them. They are starting to take them into slavery, and they are taking their lands away and their vineyards and so forth, and they are giving them loans with exorbitant interests, usurious interest. And now Nehemiah writes the story, and he says, when I heard their outcry, the outcry of the poor people and these charges, I was very angry. Leaders, let me stop here for a moment. There is time for anger. And it's not anger because you didn't get your own way and you are throwing a hissy fit. No. The things that should break our hearts, that should make us angry, are the things that break God's heart, that make God angry. And it is often abusing the helpless. It is being a bad steward, if you will, abusing your position of power. And we saw it with Jesus in the New Testament in the temple. When people in authority are abusing their power, God gets angry. And here, Nehemiah gets very angry. I pondered them in my mind, these charges and these accusations. And then I accused the nobles and officials. So note what Nehemiah is doing with his anger. He's not flying off the handle. He's not starting to shout and scream. He is pondering. But his anger is the fuel that causes him to make a difference. And he goes and he tells them, you are charging your own people interest. So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, as far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling out your own people only for them to be sold back to us. The nobles, the officials, they kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. So Nehemiah says, so I continued, what you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending to the poor people money and grain. But let us stop charging interest. Give back to them immediately their fields, their vineyards, their olive groves and houses, and also the interest you are charging them. 1% of money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. Now, can you imagine? Here is this big meeting. Nehemiah, the governor, comes, and he's basically saying, you guys, what you are doing is horrific. It's terrible what you are doing. Stop it. Now, can you imagine if somebody came to you and said, whatever you are doing is wrong, stop it? What would you do? And the account is very interesting. We will give it back, they said, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. And at this point, I just sit there and I think, how in the world he says one thing, he says stop it, and they stop it. Why is this? Why could Nehemiah say, stop doing what you're doing because it's wrong, and they obey right away? They follow his lead. It is because Nehemiah has incredible moral authority. He has moral authority because he has been walking the walk all along. All along. He says, I was entitled to a governor's allowance, but I didn't take it. I have never taken anything from anybody. I have been helping the poor myself. I have been doing whatever I could. And of course, people had seen what Nehemiah had done. And so when he stands up with moral authority, saying, you can look at my life, stop what you are doing because it's wrong, they followed and they said, we will do what you say. That is moral authority. And that takes time to build. And moral authority is not created by what you say. It is created by what you do. So it's not, parent, when you are at home, we all know this. We tell our children to do this. But if we behave like this is where they are going to follow, and they will only do what we tell them to as long as we have power over them. But when you have no power, when you want people to follow you voluntarily, they will only do so when you have moral authority as a leader. So, where do we go from here? I'm using the acrostic from John Maxwell from his wonderful book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and it's plan ahead. Plan ahead. P for predetermine a course of action. L, lay out your goals. A, adjust your priorities. And notify your team, so plan. Notify your team. Please be careful, leader. There is the temptation for us to want to run ahead, because if we do it ourselves, we can do it quicker. But then you are alone on top of the mountain. You are not going to take anybody with you. The key is, and this is a whole other set of sessions, but the key is learn how to take people with you. Notify your team. So plan. And then ahead, allow time for acceptance. I am sure when this virtual camp meeting was planned, the decision, and because it was such a big decision, was not taken from one day to the next. There had to be consultation. There had to be time to think about things. And in Africa, you're so good at this, sitting under the tree, consulting, doing what needs to be done. Give time, allow time for acceptance. But then head for action. Get up and go. Head for action. Whatever you do, expect problems. Nothing worthwhile is achieved without difficulties. So expect problems. But always point to the successes. Point to the successes. Plan ahead. Always point to the successes, because we need those small celebrations to keep us going. And then review your plan. So daily review your plan. So plan ahead. This is the way we move forward. And I want to encourage each one of us to do our utmost to finish well. When my husband and I exercise in the morning, we have our own routines, and we have 3 sets of Bible verses. And in one of those sets of Bible verses, it's Thanksgiving, it's blessings, etc. There is this beautiful text from Paul that we recite on a regular basis. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid down for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day, but not to me only, but to all those who love his appearing. Finish well. In closing, you probably have followed on television the funeral of John Lewis. So much has been written about John Lewis, this representative in the House of in Congress in America, civil rights leader. He was there with Martin Luther King. Has accomplished incredible things. He was the first Black person whose coffin, I believe, was in the rotunda. So John Lewis had this amazing funeral. But one of the articles that my husband shared with me in Time magazine encapsulated John Lewis. And it is entitled, John Lewis was the most Christ-like person I have ever met. And this was the article is written by Steny Hoyer, one of his colleagues. And then he talks about John Lewis in this sense. He says, I observed that John did not give sermons, but rather he and his life were sermons. Such was his example. And I would like to call Steve to come up at this point. Such was John Lewis's example. Such was his powerful presence. His life inspired. His presence inspired. His words inspired. His calm and patient love uplifted, calmed, and gave us confidence for the future. During this whole time, I have been supported by this wonderful, wonderful technical team. And Steve is the man here on the floor who makes sure that we keep time, that we do everything. He's been with his team. They have been just absolutely wonderful. And what struck me here today, Steve always looks so sharp with his bow ties and everything. But today he has a T-shirt. And Steve, I would like you to turn around. Because this is the T-shirt. I am the sermon. I am the sermon. Steve doesn't say very much. The people here in the IT team don't say very much. But I want to leave you with this image. Leader, be the sermon. It is not so much what you say. It is what you do. And it is only as you have moral authority that you can lead people to follow you voluntarily, not because you force them, and finish the fight, because we are here making a difference for God's kingdom. So I want to pray. Thank you so much, Steve. I want to pray again with you, with each one of us, the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples, because I think it's the essence of leadership. We forget that God has called us because all authority is given to Jesus, that he has called us to conquer nations in the power of his love, and that his kingdom come. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Keep leading. Amen.